Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Friday, January 15th, 2021. And here are our top stories. A remote work boom brings in real estate startups and bringing back commercial real estate. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Deidre Woolard. She is the editor of millionacres.com. Deidre, Happy New Year. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Well, it's always great to talk to you. So what I wanted to start off with is, a lot of people have moved in and out of cities, and there seems to be a boom during this trend of remote working where people are looking for short-term housing. And I thought, hey, let's talk to Deidre about this. What can you tell us about this? Seems to be a very interesting trend.
It is an interesting trend. The question is, how long is it going to last? So right now we're sort of in that mid stage of that vaccine rollout. People are expecting by the end of the year that the majority of people will be vaccinated. But in this interim time, when a lot of people are still working remotely, you have all of this flexibility that's been happening. So last year saw an uptick in migration. And this year, most people are assuming that they're not going to be back in the office till at least the summertime. So they're exploring. They're seeing where they could live, where they might have a better lifestyle, what opportunities are kind of out there for them. So that's driven a lot of exploration on an individual level, and it's also been a boost for these tech companies and new startups that are creating different solutions to match what people want.
Now, Deidre, is this like an Airbnb? Because when you and I had spoken in 2020, Airbnb had not been doing well because of the pandemic. But does this give revitalization to Airbnb and other similar enterprises?
Absolutely. So Airbnb is very interesting because when the pandemic hit, yes, a lot of people canceled, and that was a huge problem. But there's been a revitalization of Airbnb as well. They just had their IPO at the end of the year. They're now trading at about $160 a share. They've got a market cap of $96 billion, which makes them bigger than a lot of the large hotel brands. So Airbnb has come back, but these other companies, Sonder is an example. They've received over $500 million in funding. What they do is something sort of in between an Airbnb, which is usually under a month, and a longer term lease. So something like Sonder would be like between a month and 3 months. And that's kind of the range that people are testing out right now, because if you live somewhere for a couple of months, that's really enough time to learn what's in the town, kind of put your routines together and see if that's somewhere that you'd actually like to live on a more permanent basis.
Does this type of service really cater to one particular demographic, or is it really all demographics? People in my age category, maybe a little bit older, maybe younger? Is this something that, regardless of your age, you're thinking about picking up and trying this out?
In the beginning, I believe that these companies were designed to cater to what they call the digital nomads, people who were in tech, mostly younger, and had that flexibility. The interesting thing is that the pandemic has actually shifted the demographic a bit. So it's not just young people anymore. People are moving with their kids because they have been in remote schools. So you've seen the flexibility that the younger generation enjoyed before the pandemic actually spread out a bit to different groups that are testing out all kinds of new living situations.
And what does this mean we talked earlier and during the pandemic last year about hoteliers, right? People who run hotels. Does this, you mentioned Airbnb kind of coming back, but does this short-term growth in some of these tech offerings, does that really push the hoteliers back a little bit and put them back on their heels even more than they are?
Possibly, because right now, part of the thing with the pandemic is that people aren't interested in large scale multifamily. They don't want to live in a large apartment building. So there's also that concern about large hotels. People don't want to be around a lot of people. So hotels that have little cottages or cabins or are spread out and have more room for people to have privacy will do better than some of the traditional vertical hotels.
And Deidre, if I'm an investor and I'm looking at Airbnb, I'm looking at this market, and I know it possibly is a short-term gain, but do I make the decision to either rent out a portion of my home? Do I buy an investment home? I mean, are those things that people that are listening to this that have some money may want to consider in the short run to take advantage of this kind of upswing in the market? Because real estate sales have been kind of dampened a little bit, or at least tempered, for a lot of different reasons.
Commercial real estate has been tempered, but residential real estate has seen huge sales. The median existing home price is over $310,000. So that's part of if a person wanted to find a rental property, it's challenging out there. Inventory is still very, very low. So it is an option, but it absolutely is a challenge. And I wouldn't necessarily bank on this being a long-term trend looking beyond to 2022.
Yeah, this is kind of like if you got in during the pandemic or early part of the pandemic and realizing that people were going to be digital nomads, I think you were set to benefit. But to your point, I mean, eventually people, I think, will kind of resettle. Now, whether they resettle back in cities, will they resettle back in urban areas? But I guess that's the thought there.
Exactly. It's really too soon to know how long this remote work situation is going to last for different people, if that flexibility is going to shift, and if some of these moves are temporary or permanent. I still believe in the value of cities, and I believe, especially for New York, once you get Broadway and things like that back, you're going to see a return to cities.
I mean, and just going with that theme, I mean, a whole year plus has been lost. I mean, we've all been sequestered, quarantined, however you want to describe it. We've been in different parts of the country, maybe even parts of the world. Do those people kind of get anchored where they are, or do they come back? Or is it a new group of people, a new group of high school graduates or recent college graduates, maybe not high school, but it could be high school, or recent college graduates or empty nesters that flock back to the cities?
I think it'll be both. I think that a lot of people in 2020 were trying out a more suburban or rural life to see if they liked it. And some people really will and will stay there. Other people will come back. But you make a really good point about younger people. Household formation is going to continue to rise. One of the things that we're hoping to see in 2021 is some of the people that moved home maybe after college or during college are now going to move back out on their own and get rental units and resume their lives away from their parents.
Yeah, a lot of people may have moved back, right? The college has been was online. Maybe they lost their job. Whatever happened, they moved back. Well, Deidre, I want to go to a very quick break, and you alluded to it in your comments in the first segment. When we come back, we'll talk to Deidre about what some of these cities and states are going to do to reinvigorate commercial real estate. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Deidre Woolard of MillionAcres.com. Deidre, great to see you again, and thanks for staying with us, of course, this morning.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about, you mentioned it in your first, in the first segment, commercial real estate, real troubles as people have fled the offices and even left cities. They become digital nomads, gone to different parts of the country or just gone to suburbia. Let's talk about what some of the governors, some of the leadership in this country at state and local levels are doing to reinvigorate commercial real estate. What, for example, is happening in California and New York?
Well, you've got some interesting things happening. We talked in the last segment about remote work, and certainly offices are still mostly vacant. So in New York, there's an occupancy rate of about 13% as of January 6th. So that's really low. People are not coming back to work. And the other factor is hotels. Hotels are in real trouble in 2021. A lot of them have loans coming due. Occupancy is still really low. So a lot of the governors are trying to figure out what can we do with these buildings if some of these hotels default, or if these spaces are essentially not going to be used by travelers anymore. So the interesting thing we saw is that Governor Cuomo of New York, in his State of the State address, said that he's going to create a plan so that owners can repurpose hotel and office space. And his plan is to create a 5-year period where property owners can convert office buildings and hotels in New York to residential use. So that's really interesting. It's not something we've seen happen before.
And Deidre, in that example, who owns the building? So if you're going to convert it to hotels to help the homeless, is that something that the government buys, the state of New York buys, or the city of New York buys?
It would have, if it's being converted to residential use, then that would just be the building owner deciding that. But another thing that Governor Gavin Newsom of California has done is he wants to invest another $750 million in what is called Project Home Key. Now, that's a project that turns the hotels into housing for the homeless. And in that case, the owners would be compensated for doing that by the government.
And I'm coming to you from Charlotte, and we have there are a lot of people. We covered this on the program several weeks ago. There are a lot of homeless people in this country, even more so, that have been hit very hard, and are not really receiving aid. The aid has not filtered down in a way that has really reached people or organizations that need it. Could this be a way, at least talking about Governor Newsom's plan, this could be a way to kind of jumpstart and maybe provide shelter for some of those homeless folks? But again, I guess it would come down to who's actually buying the space, the conversion. I mean, conversions don't happen overnight. They take time. You've got to paint, rebuild walls, do the, set up security measures, et cetera.
Yeah, there are a lot of unanswered questions about this. The other factor here is eviction moratoriums. So we've seen state, local, there's a federal eviction moratorium, which is set to expire. And so one of the things that I believe we really need to see from a government level is support for the building owners and the landlords, especially the ones who haven't been getting rent. I'm always concerned about these small landlords, the mom and pop landlords that I believe kind of make a community great, whether they're owning small apartment buildings or single family. Those landlords need support because their tenants aren't paying. And so it's really, you want to make sure that both sides of that equation are being supported so that people have a place to stay, but that landlords are also able to pay their rent and not lose their properties.
Is there a concern, and we talked about it in the first segment with these digital nomads, that they don't come back, that people, living in a major city and working which means you could work in a major city, very expensive. The cost to rent or buy, very high. Typically a college graduate, unless they've got a nice trust fund, might be a little bit more challenging, or a really great job, I should say, might be really challenging. Is there any maybe pessimism there that it might take longer? I think it will come back, but it might take longer than is projected.
It may take longer. So in San Francisco, for example, rents have really dropped. Rents dropped by between 20 and 30%, depending on what type of property it is. That's significant, but in San Francisco, rent is obviously still very high, and so that pushes people away from wanting to settle there. The question also is, what does a city provide? So during the pandemic, part of the reason that people left was because they weren't getting the benefit of living in a city. If you're living in a city like New York, you're trading square footage for the opportunities, the entertainment opportunities, the social opportunities, the work opportunities. So if you're not getting those opportunities, or you can get those opportunities and live somewhere else for less money, that becomes a factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess 2021 looks to be more of wait and see. We're talking in early January or mid-January at this point, and vaccination seems to be slow. I mean, how do investors, people who own commercial real estate, there's risk there, right? And how do you bridge the gap? I mean, if you're waiting for payments from renters, whether they're commercial or residential, I mean, that has got to be extremely challenging in terms of managing in this type of environment.
It is challenging, and it's definitely more challenging on the hotel side and retail side than the office side, because offices are traditionally long-term leases. Those companies are still, for the most part, paying their leases. The question really is the hotels, especially because hotels, it's occupancies on a day-to-day basis. And so what we're really seeing is a lot of hotel loans are becoming delinquent. The most recent data from December from the Mortgage Banker Association showed that 22.5% of the balance of lodging loans weren't current in December. So that's just a lot of concern out there for hotels.
We're going into a new administration on January 20th. You mentioned the moratorium. And I want to put, I'm not putting you on the spot, but just if you had to look at the tea leaves, the sentiment out there, do you see the moratorium being extended, given that we've had difficulty getting people vaccinated? I know that's going to be a focus and effort of the new administration, but just thoughts around the moratorium and extending that.
I definitely think that there's going to be another stimulus package, and what it contains at this point is kind of anybody's guess. The new administration does have a focus on housing and affordable housing, so that's a concern for them. I would not be surprised to see the federal eviction moratorium gets extended again, partly because I think that a lot of the state and local courts, we've seen whenever local cities, they stop their evictions moratoriums, and the courts get flooded with evictions, and that's become very hard to manage. So I think that the government on the federal level is going to be very cautious about how they do this. Nobody wants to do anything that's going to upset the economy. The economy is fragile, it's recovering, but we've seen this K-shaped economy where the stock market is doing really well, but a lot of people aren't doing as well. And the new administration really wants to balance that out. So the next stimulus package is going to have to really sort of help balance the economy, but it's going to be a slow process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll keep watching this, Deidre. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Again, Happy New Year. Thanks for sharing your perspective, and we'll catch up with you again very soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow, Saturday, with a very special interview and a look at some of our best segments for the week. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.